climbing on the crowded booth with Bryce Coon. Hey, everybody, and happy Tuesday. We'll say it's happy Tuesday for a certain fan base. This is Bryce Coon here with the crowded booth, and we got our national championship recap. Georgia Bulldogs, for the first time in 41 years, have won the national championship. We're going to have a special guest here joining us in just a few seconds. You know the show. Ralph Leary, the co-host, will be joining us later on as we kind of break down what happened last night of the national championship game as well. We want to thank our sponsors as well. You can see those on the screen. You can also see those down in the description below. Check them out if you're in the Chattahoochee Valley area. You don't if you're a big fan of Dr. Squatch soap. So we're going to bring in our first guest, though, here, and it's my good friend. He has ventured so many times to different places, and he finally gets to have a drive home that he didn't get a lot of sleep. But, Palmer, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, like you said, not too much sleep over here, making the trip back to Athens from Indianapolis. Certainly a fun time up there. Exciting to see the team that I cover coming home with the championship, and an exciting game for the Georgia fan base.
And listen, last night did not lack excitement. Palmer, there's going to be a lot of different angles that can be taken on what happened last night. Obviously, the Kirby Smart finally getting over the hump. Stetson Bennett, the story that obviously he has, and a lot of people feel like it's one of the greatest stories in college football history just from his journey. But I want to ask you about this. I don't want to get too far ahead, but Kirby Smart already kind of talked about it this morning when he said that other programs had about a 10 days head start on their transfer portal. This is not the end, George, for Georgia fans. I mean, this felt like you kind of broke through. And should Georgia fans be optimistic of saying, okay, we broke through, but now let's keep it going and see if we can continue to challenge Alabama and become one of those consistent elite dynasties?
Yeah, it's funny. His interview with Reese Davis this morning on ESPN, literally the last words he said was, hopefully this will help us get a couple more great recruits. So, that guy is always focused on recruiting, always focused on the next step. It makes it interesting because there's not a ton of time for him to celebrate this. Like you said, other programs are getting a head start on recruiting, whether that's for the February signing day or for the transfer portal, bringing guys in from there. Certainly an important step for college football and making the progression from 2021 to the 2022 season. Like you said, Georgia doesn't want this to just be a one-hit wonder type deal. They want to be a program that is consistently on this stage, consistently playing in the playoffs and playing for national championships and winning national championships. And so that takes recruiting. And so I think that Kirby Smart is a guy that loves to recruit. He certainly loves his team, loves the University of Georgia, and he's going to celebrate this one. But he's going to, do his due diligence on the recruiting trail as well. And part of that also, factors into the team management of the guys that played in the game last night. He's got to figure out which of those guys are coming back, which of those guys are leaving for the NFL, and exactly how many spots Georgia has to go out and fill.
And Palmer, you talked about that, and he said there's already going to be some players that they've talked to that will transfer out. Listen, attrition's kind of a part of it. I mean, when you have a program, and Alabama fans have known this for so long, when you have a program that is that successful, other teams are going to come and poach. And obviously Dan Lanning is the obvious one, already being over in Eugene. But is there, in your opinion, and obviously I know you can't disclose all of it, are there players and maybe some more coaches that could get some really strong looks after winning a national championship in Athens?
Yeah, one of the coaches that has already been in discussion as far as LSU goes for their wide receivers coaching position is Cortez Hankton. He's from that area. He's kind of expected to take that job. LSU has not officially announced it, but there have been several sources out there saying that he is expected to be the next member of Brian Kelly's staff down in Baton Rouge. And so, that's certainly an interesting storyline to watch. You could be looking at guys like Glenn Schumann being recruited as try to pull them away from Athens, promote them into a higher position. It's certainly going to be interesting to see as Georgia replaces Dan Lanning as the defensive coordinator, what direction they decide to go there. They worked with co-defensive coordinators Lanning working alongside Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann. A bunch of defensive masterminds in that group. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what direction they go permanently, whether they decide to keep those two as co-coordinators, whether they decide to give one of them the title and let one of them take on spearhead the responsibilities there. So that's certainly going to be interesting from the coaching perspective. If Cortez Hankton does leave, like is expected, it would also be interesting to see how Georgia handles that on the offensive side of the ball, because that opens up a very important position, a position that's important in recruiting, important in just being able to continue to progress and compete in this age of college football where the passing game is so important. Tom Monken is a guy that has experience coaching wide receivers. He's currently the offensive coordinator and working with the quarterback. He could still be the offensive coordinator and work with the wide receivers, in which case you may see a quality control guy like Buster Faulkner move up, who's got tons of experience working with quarterbacks. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see where they go on defense, and it's certainly going to be interesting to see which one of these players decide to leave and who Georgia decides to try and fill their spots with.
They're going to have to fill some spots. There's no doubt about it. But Palmer, let's not lose sight. I mean, we're less than 24 hours, and it was interesting. A lot of players and Lewis Cine on the podium last night. He sat there and he said, it was almost like he walked into a question of where they set him up to say this is the best defense of all time, but instead he said, I think this is going down in the history books. There's no doubt what Stetson Bennett did, the touchdown grab, the A.D. Mitchell's play, George Pickens' catch, the load of the running backs, what they did between Cook and White. But this came down to a defense that stopped an Alabama offense. And there's a lot of conversation. Ralph and I are going to talk about this later about they were down two wide receivers. How well did this defense play? I mean, just you were there. You were kind of the eyes there for us. What was it like?
No, it was crucial for this defense to play well, considering how the first meeting between these two teams played out, given the fact that Alabama put up 41 points on Georgia, a season high there, and really just dominated that game offensively. They were able to do pretty much whatever they wanted in that SEC championship matchup. Bryce Young threw for an SEC championship record, 421 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions there. And so, for Georgia to respond after hearing all the noise from that performance, to respond in the way that they did against Michigan, but furthermore to respond the way that they did in this game to hold Alabama to 5 field goal attempts. They blocked one of them, so only 4 went through the upright. And then a touchdown that they were put in a tough position with short field, after the controversial fumble call. Certainly a very strong performance from Georgia. They gave up a couple of big plays, but their red zone defense came up very strong and limited the damage that Alabama was able to do.
They were able to limit that. They were able to get a pass rush against Bryce Young. And Kirk Herbstreit said this, Palmer, and then we'll let you go, as I know you wouldn't mind grabbing some sleep on your way back. But Kirk Herbstreit said this. He said when they walked out of the building, him and Chris Fowler, after the Orange Bowl, he looked at Chris and he said, this team's just a little bit pissed off, and they played angry. Did you get the sense that defensive front, you can talk about the revenge factor, and I think a lot of people kind of overplay that stigma, but did you feel like it was there? There was a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, especially for some of those guys that came back. I heard a lot that this was done, that they remembered, and a guy in Julian Rochester, who was on that roster when Georgia got beat on the long pass from Tua to Devontae Smith, they did it for him. There was guys like Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis. They came back for this moment. Did you feel like that defense had a chip on their shoulder coming into this game, and how evident was that they were just playing angry? I mean, they looked like they were bullying that offensive line for Alabama at times.
Yeah, I definitely think that there was a chip on the shoulder of the defense, and you bring up Julian Rochester and Georgia playing for those guys in that 2018 SEC the 2018 SEC championship game, along with the 2018 national championship game. A lot of those guys were in the building last night, whether it was DeAndre Swift, Rodrigo Blankenship, Nick Chubb, those guys were there to support their team, and they wanted to be as much of a part of the celebration as any player that suited up in red and black last night. So, in talking to some other folks on the beat, what happened last night doesn't happen without the precedent that those guys set, for Georgia early on in Kirby Smart's head coaching career. And so, as much as I think that the defense was playing with a chip on their shoulder to rebound and prove themselves, I think the whole team was playing with a chip on their shoulder, to get that monkey off their back and beat Alabama. We're 0-4 against them under Kirby Smart before last night, and I think that if they were going to take one of those wins, it would probably be last night's one.
Well, listen, Paul, we appreciate it, man. You've hopped on this show all season long. And listen, we'll give you a little bit of a break, but I know spring practice starts very soon. We're going to have you on again. But, Palmer, we appreciate you coming on all season long.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce.
Once again, that's Palmer Thombs of Dog HQ. We appreciate him as always. He's a great friend of the show. He does a good job as well with what he does. Hey, when we come back, Ralph Leary is going to come back on the show, and we're going to talk about this national championship. He and I watched it together. But first, you got to hear from one of our favorite sponsors, the first one. They've been with us for a year now. Some of the best food in town.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Back here in the crowded booth, Ralph, how you doing, sir? Did you get some good sleep after last
night? I'm running on about 3 hours of sleep right now, and it's been a rough day.
It's been a rough day. Hey, but listen, you watched a game that is, I know you grew up an Auburn fan. I don't know. You were telling me, we're sitting there, you said, I don't have a dog in the fight, but the dogs came to fight. And this game was, it feels good for Georgia fans. And you tweeted out last night, what a year for Georgia sports. I know there's a certain sect of Atlanta that's not too happy about it. They've let me know that very well today. But I told them, I said, hey, let 8-year-old Bryce be happy. Let 8-year-old Bryce be happy.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Ralph, Palmer provided some great insight on kind of what happens today and going forward.
Yeah.
And I think for me, this game was, and I said this on our, we did our live show yesterday of the call-ins, and we're going to do that again at some point this week. It was just a ton of fun. But Ralph, it was, could they and can they? And we knew they could, but I think every Georgia fan went into yesterday with this cautious optimism. It was, if Georgia gets a pass rush, then. If Stetson Bennett throws the ball well, then. But everyone was afraid to say the result of then, and then was win a national championship. You're not a fan of Georgia, but you've watched the game. I know you love the SEC. We grew up in SEC country. Man, what does this just say about the job that Kirby Smart has done? I mean, from a mental aspect, we talked about that yesterday, the culture, just for them to be able to actually get over the hump. And like I said, I think it opens the door just for them, maybe mentally unlock something.
I mean, yeah, it just shows what Kirby was able to do for the past, 5-6 years of getting to this moment here. Could not beat Alabama. He just never could. And, people were saying he just can't beat Nick Saban. He could be anyone else but Nick. And, Saban is the best coach against his former coaches, or his former assistants. And, that was all true. I mean, he's only lost twice. And that was twice this year. So Nick Saban has done a great job, for one, teaching Kirby Smart everything he knows. And people will say, well, Kirby's learned a lot. Well, yeah, of course he has. But he learned a lot from Nick Saban. He'll admit that. You saw the post game last night when they met at the midfield. Great respect for both of each other. I mean, they're talented coaches in their own rights. Nick Saban's probably the greatest coach of all time. Kirby is learning so much every day he goes, and to be able to stick with your quarterback from game 2 of the season through the rest of the year, when people say, why is JT not playing? Why don't you play someone else? Stetson can't do it. Just run the ball more. Stetson Bennett is a national champion, Bryce.
Yeah.
That man is the heart and soul of that team. And a lot of people say Jordan Davis, Zamir White. They wouldn't. They all love Stetson Bennett. They're behind him no matter what. They're always with him. They trust him. They believe in him. You didn't see one player all year complain that their quarterback was a problem. They said we made mistakes offensively. We couldn't run the ball. We couldn't catch. Defense made a few mistakes. In certain games, but this was just something that everyone's been waiting for. So for Stetson to finally win this game, and I know a lot of Georgia players are deserving. The Kobe Dean's one, Zamir White, Jordan Davis, all those guys who stayed for Georgia this year, huge. But for Stetson to step up and win this game right here, and he had to do a lot. They figured out how to run the ball in the second half, Bryce. They actually ran the ball. We probably said it about how many times do you think we said it last night?
I mean, it's seemingly like, and this pass right here was huge too, the pass to George Pickens, and we got the highlights rolling here on the show. If you're listening in on the radio across East Alabama, West Georgia, that's what we're kind of alluding to. We got the highlights rolling here. But, Ralph, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they finally ran the ball, and it worked. But I'll tell you one thing. Give the drive after that Stetson came out after Alabama scored the touchdown, That to me, and this is what I said, and I'll take this off because I want it to be just us on here for this. Ralph, I said yesterday on yesterday's live show, Georgia has never won the key moments, and I looked at you about 3 or 4 times during that game last night, and I said it's a key moment here. It's a key moment, and if they can win it, they'll win the football game. Now, when Stetson fumbled that ball. Ralph, I don't know if you've seen the stat. He didn't have an incompletion after that.
No. Well, like 4 for 4, wasn't it?
It was like 4 for 4 for 80-something yards. I mean, or 67-something yards. I mean, 2 touchdown passes. Ralph, it speaks to the poise of the young man. It's not the champion that Georgia envisioned. It's maybe not the one they wanted at sometimes, but it's the one that they're glad they had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not the one that they envisioned, not the one they may have wanted at some points this season, but they're glad they have them. And I think the thing about it is when you go back to the fumble, which was now looking at it, Ralph, I understand why they call it a fumble. Like I get why they call it a fumble. Alabama finally gets into the end zone. That was the moment where all Georgia fans went, oh no. But what did they do? They came out and they threw the pass to Jermaine Burton. Then it was a pass interference deep down the field on Burton. Then they get the sack, and then it's a 40-yard bomb to A.D. Mitchell. In under 2 minutes, they answered. And then what did they do? Force a 3 and out. Then they go back, and James Cook gets the long. I mean, this, and then Brock Bowers. I mean, it's just, that was something that was the missing ingredient and was winning those key moments. And you talked about several players, Kobe Dean. I just felt like this defense took it upon themselves. I felt like it was Palmer hit the nail on the head. There was a sense of, we've got to get after it. And I want to address this too, because we're going to talk about the Alabama side of things. And listen, Alabama, I said this, and I posted on Instagram about 2 hours before the game. There's going to be 2 narratives that come out of this game. If Alabama would, now we know, since Alabama lost, people are going to question, oh no, is the dynasty, is Georgia going to be the new king in the SEC? I think that Georgia's right there. They've been right there for the past 3 or 4 years, but Alabama, until proven otherwise consistently, is going to be that benchmark. And I think it's so intriguing to watch what happened. What happened on the field, Ralph, was, there were some injuries. But you know what? This is interesting. A lot of Alabama fans are complaining about injuries. And you sent me some excerpts of some certain people who were upset about it, about the Mechie injury and the Jameson Williams injury. Isn't it fitting that Nick Saban won his first title on the heels of a Colt McCoy injury?
I did see that tweet, by the way.
Yeah, it's a part of football. It's a part of football, and you have to play it. And I'm not saying that because 8-year-old Bryce is giddy that the red and black finally won. I'm saying it because that's just part of it, and you have to live with that aspect of the game. It happens across all sports. But, man, what was a pivotal moment for you in this game? I mean, what was – I mean, you could point to kind of the sequence that I talked about right there, but what was something for you when you said, holy cow, like they're not going to be down and out?
I honestly feel like it's the block field goal. Yeah. I think that was the turning point, really.
That was like a 14-play drive where they were, running. Brian Robinson was running the ball down Georgia's throat.
Yeah, and I just, it was fourth quarter. I think it was fourth quarter, Bryce. And then
early fourth, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a 17-play drive, 68 yards, 7 minutes off the clock. And that would have made Alabama go up 12-6. Yeah. And they didn't. And then Georgia went down and scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then force a field goal, fumbled, and then touchdown, punt Alabama, touchdown Georgia, pick six, game over. That right there, I feel like just flipped the switch. The interception by Alabama or the interception by Georgia, kind of early in the game. I'm sorry, yeah. When Christopher Smith, I think that's his name, right?
Yeah. The safety intercepted Bryce Young, and they didn't score.
Yeah, they didn't score. That felt like a lot of momentum was going toward Georgia, and they lost it because they didn't do what they wanted to do in that drive. And I talked about it personally. You got to think the defense is kind of getting a little pissed off that their offense is not doing anything.
Yeah.
You help us out. We're doing everything we can out here. We can't hold them much longer. And I think that finally they stepped up and they made some plays, and they figured out we can just run the ball and we'll be here for it. If we run the ball, Zamir White. What a game, man. I mean, he didn't have to go over 100 yards. He didn't need to. When you carry it 13 times for 84 yards, and then James Cook 6 for 77.
And he had the biggest run. Ralph, did you know that was the longest run against an Alabama defense since 2015 when Nick Chubb ran one for 83 yards?
Wow.
That's crazy to think about. I mean, that's how – but that just shows you how well coached and good of a defense is. Hey, when we come back, we're going to wrap it up here on the Crowded Booth, here on the radio aspect of things, and then we're going to talk to you about what should we look ahead to? Because Palmer talked about it. There's going to be some attrition happening for Georgia. That's kind of the next task, a part of being about an elite program.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
Gotta love Dr. Squatch back here on the Crowded Booth. Hey, we have our Looking Ahead presented by Climate Control Heating and Air in Columbus. Ralph, let's take a look at this because looking ahead, Alabama has dealt with this so well. And this is what makes them an elite program. There was a number about since 2009 of how many coordinators, offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators that Nick Saban's had. And Kirby was kind of the first big assistant to leave Alabama once he did. I would say big one that's kind of gone on to have some serious success. But when you look at this, you thought I froze there for a second.
Yeah.
When you kind of look at what's ahead, Alabama's done such a good job. And I want to point out what Nick Saban said about Bryce Young and Will Anderson. Those two kids are not defined by one game. And I love that. I absolutely, because Alabama, I guarantee you, I don't know if you saw, Ralph, that they've split the odds. It's like 2-1 odds for both teams to be in the national championship next year. And I'm going to tell you one thing. With the way these two teams recruited and their track record, I wouldn't question that. Now, A&M has one of the most ridiculous transfer classes and recruiting classes I've ever seen in this upcoming cycle, but Georgia and Alabama have the depth to do it. And so we may see another matchup in 2023. But, Ralph, when you look at this, how can Georgia combat that? Obviously, Dan Lanning's leaving. I told you last night that you got to feel like it's in good hands if you have a guy like Will Muschamp, who's proven to be one of the top defensive coordinators of the country when he's in that role. A lot of people were kind of marred by the fact that he didn't do a good job as a head coach. The guy was a heck of a DC at his time at Texas and Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that whatever Kirby Smart has planned for the defense next year, for coaching wise, that he's got to have something in the back of his mind. When Dan Lanning took the job at Oregon, that was probably one of the first things, like who's going to be next in line. I think Dan Lanning's probably thrown some name out for him just in case. I mean, Dan Lanning didn't go out, in a bad way. He went out coaching that game. Yeah. If I'm correct, I'm pretty sure he left this morning from the airport straight to Oregon.
Straight to Eugene.
So,
and you told us yesterday on the live show he named as DC?
Yeah, named as DC yesterday morning, actually. So Dan Lanning went out on top. What a great year for him. Great, I think 2 years at Georgia, 3 years at Georgia, if I'm correct.
2 or 3 years, yeah.
Terrific job he did there, and he deserves his head coaching job now. Who fills in that spot? I don't really know. That's up to Kirby Smart. He has that plan. That's his idea. You could probably throw some names out. Will Muschamp's probably your top one.
Glenn Schumann, the linebackers coach.
Glenn Schumann, yeah, but I think Will Muschamp's got the most, better transcript right now because he's coached for so long and he's done great jobs. I mean, even as a defense coordinator, no matter where he's been, he's done a great job.
Yeah, and even when he was a head coach, his defenses were really, really good. They just never had an offense to help him out.
Exactly. So I feel like going forward for Georgia, it's going to be okay. Obviously, you have what are you going to do for quarterback next year? It's just one big question that no one knows.
Yeah.
You're fine offensively, in my opinion. I think you bring a lot of talent back next year. Obviously, you bring back Brock Bowers. I mean, what else do you need right now?
Probably the best player in college football. Hey, Ralph, let's touch on Alabama real quick, and then I want to go.
Yeah.
Alabama, they're going to be right back in this position. There's really no need to talk about it too much. Bryce Young is going to be unreal. I know Brian Robinson ends his career, but there's a stable of running backs that are going to be very good. We saw kind of the future at the receiver position. Although it's raw, it's going to be really, really good. But, Ralph, I want to ask you this as we kind of wrap it up here. And this is an interesting topic that we may have for conversation over the next couple of weeks. Does Stetson Bennett come back? Can I go first? I'll go first.
Yeah, please go first. I don't know how that.
I was talking about this with my dad, and he goes, "Why would you? What more do you? I mean, the only thing that you can do is go undefeated. If you go out on top right now, you go out literally a Georgia legend. You do." Yeah. And I don't know if they're joking about like the fact that Atlanta Brave, like you could do now. ESPN could just say we're going to do a whole documentary on the state of Georgia from 2021 to 2022. About sports, because that storyline would be unreal, and Jock Peterson has to be a main character, and so does Stetson Bennett. But what more can you accomplish if you're Stetson Bennett? Go undefeated? I mean, yes,
does it matter?
But does it matter? Yeah. And so to me, I mean, I'd go out on top, and I'd go out and win the national championship under my belt, and bringing the first one, and being a local product and a Georgia guy. And obviously the storyline's been beat to death about how big of a fan he was. What do you think? You think he comes back? We won't get into JT Daniels. We'll save that conversation for later. But yeah, Stetson Bennett. I mean, you think there's a chance he comes back?
If he comes back to college football, it's not in Georgia's uniform. I really think so. I feel like what you said, he's done with Georgia. And there's nothing against Georgia. It's just that he went out on top.
All he could.
There's nothing left for you there. Yeah. And if he goes to the draft, he goes to the draft. He may or may not get drafted. Who knows? Probably not. He's just not the biggest guy for an NFL team. But I honestly feel like he went out on top, like you said. He's done everything you can ask for. There's nothing more. Like you said, you can go undefeated. Is it worth it though? I mean, you already won a national championship. You don't need to go undefeated to win a national championship. You just proved that yourself this year. So, enjoy your career, what you've done at Georgia, and enjoy your next. You have one more year of eligibility. Go somewhere else if you want to, or just go to the draft and go undrafted probably. Because no offense to him, it's probably not getting drafted in my opinion.
No, he's probably not going to get drafted, but he will have a jersey hanging. There will be Stetson Bennett jerseys all year. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to be honest with you, Ralph. And I know I'm going to have some Tech fans that watch this. I'm already on the market for a Stetson Bennett jersey.
I'm going to say something, Quinn. I know I texted you this personally. This is crazy to me to think about this. Think about all the Georgia teams that in the past with Matthew Stafford and Sean Marino and AJ Green, then Aaron Murray, Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall, and then you got Jake Fromm, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and just the talented Georgia teams in the past. And then Stetson Bennett is the quarterback to lead them to a national championship. And people think I'm being rude and being mean about it. It's just awesome to think about how awesome college football really is, because doesn't matter who you are. If you're in the right place at the right time, there's nothing that can stop you on top of a team like that. So I feel like Stetson Bennett was placed at Georgia at the right time to help lead this team here. I wouldn't, and you asked me this question during the game. Do you think JT could come in?
Yeah.
I in my head, I'm like, probably not. I wouldn't put him in. There's just no point. And you said it perfectly. What's he going to do against Will Anderson?
Yeah, unless he can figure out how to block Will Anderson, it wasn't going to matter. Georgia does win, though, 33-18. That's all the time we got for today. Hey, catch us if you're on the radio. Make sure to follow us at The Crowded Booth on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We got some fun stuff happening over on Twitter and Instagram as well. Facebook, we post some content there. But, hey, make sure to hit up the YouTube channel and subscribe to that. We're approaching that 200 subscribers, continually growing, and we got some fun stuff. We're kicking off 2022. Got to cover the post-game press conferences last night, and man, we got a recruiting nugget that we're going to have to throw out there at some point. Local product has decommitted, and we'll be searching somewhere else. As for Ralph Leary, for our sponsors as well, I'm Bryce Kuhn saying so long. We will see you once again this week. Head over to the YouTube page or tune in to us on the radio on Thursday. We'll see you later. Bye, Ralph.
See you, bud.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn.